So we are just going to practice graphing and finding the different parts of our hyperbolas. So I would like you to go ahead and pause the video and then work through these three problems to see if you can graph and find the information correctly. All right, so as I'm looking at problem 1, since my x squared is positive, that tells me that this is horizontal. And then my center will be 0, 0, since I don't have those grouping symbols. And then for the a, remember we are taking the square root of the number underneath our positive term. So square root of 4 is 2. B is the square root of the one underneath the negative. So square root of 16 is 4. And then for the c value, we are using c squared equals a squared plus b squared. So I'm adding these two things together and then taking the square root of that. So 16 plus 4 is 20, and then I can simplify that. So as I'm thinking of this, I can think of it as 4 times 5. Square root of 4 is 2, and then the 5 stays in the radical. Now if you want to find the parts first and then graph, or graph and then find the parts, the order that you find things in does not matter. So I'm going to go through and find the different parts first, just so I can practice that, since we're not always going to graph. So I, again, like to do a rough sketch as I'm finding these things. So since I know it's horizontal, that means that my U's are going to open to the left and to the right. Okay. So that means then for my vertices, from my center point, I'm going to have to add and subtract my a value to the x of the center, and my a is 2. So 0 minus 2 is negative 2, and 0 plus 2 is positive 2. And then the foci, remember, is inside of our U shape, so those are also to the left and right of my center. So I'm adding and subtracting my c value to the x of the center. So this will be negative 2 square root of 5, comma 0, and then positive 2 square root of 5, comma 0. And remember, the order that you're putting your points in doesn't matter. So if you had these two things flipped around, that is completely fine. And then for the asymptotes, we are using this formula, since it's horizontal. Okay. So this will be y minus 0, so I'm not going to write it, equals plus and minus. So if it helps, that way if you don't want to reference a formula every time, remember how we create the box. So I would have to go over a and then up b. So remember, for our slope, it's always the rise over run. So if I'm going up b, that means that the b would have to be on the top and a is on the bottom. Or again, if you forget, that's the part that's in your formula sheet. Okay. So 2 over 4 would, 4 over 2 would then simplify just to be 2. So I'm going to write this as 2, and then since I'm taking x minus 0, I would just have an x there. And then my domain is going to be in two parts, since it's opening to the left and to the right. So this will be from negative infinity to negative 2, and I'm getting this negative 2 from the vertex, or from 2 to positive infinity. And that means that my range is going to be the all reals. Okay. And then to graph, we are going to start with the center, so 0, 0. Since it's horizontal, we are going left and right our a value. I'm going to label that as my vertex. And then we are going up and down the b value. And then we are connecting those 4 points into a box. And I'm using that dash line because that's not actually a part of our graph. We're just using it to help get the general shape. And then connecting the corners for the asymptotes. And then the U shape has to go through the vertices, and it's going to get really close to those asymptotes, but not touch or cross over them. Okay. All right, next one. I know that this one is vertical because this time my positive squared group is y. And then my center, so this is my h and my k, so my center is -2, 3. And again, just to kind of help me think through things, I'm going to do a sketch. So vertical means it's opening up and down. And then I'll need my a, b, and c values. So I'm going to work on figuring out those next. So I'm assuming that this is over a 1. So remember, our a squared is always underneath the positive term. So the square root of 1 is 1. And then b is the square root of 9, which is 3. And then for c, we are adding these two things together and taking the square root. So this would be the square root of 10, which can't be simplified. Okay. So since I'm up and down this time, that means that I'm adding and subtracting my a value to the y of my center. And then for the foci, I'll have to add and subtract my c value to the y of the center. So this will be -2, and then 3 minus 1 is 2. And then -2, 3 plus 1 is 4. And then for the foci, again, my x is staying the same. And then this will be 3 minus the square root of 10. And then 3 plus the square root of 10. Okay. And then for my asymptotes, I will have y minus 3 equals. And then as I'm thinking through what the slope should be, remember when we make the box, we're going to go up a this time and over b. So a will have to be on the top. So this will be 1/3. And don't forget your plus minus, 1/3. Then in parentheses, x plus 2, since we are subtracting a negative. Now because it's vertical, that means that our domain this time is -infinity to +infinity. And then our range will be in those two parts. So -infinity up to +2 for the vertex. Or it is going from 4 to infinity, which I'm getting the 4 from the other y value of our vertex. Okay. Graphing, starting with our center. So left 2, up 3 for the center. And then vertices, I'm going up and down my a value. So I'm going up and down 1. And then my b is 3, so I'm going to the left and right. And then I'm connecting those into that box, which is going to help me get the asymptote. So I'm connecting the corners. And then my U shape has to go through the vertex and get close to those asymptotes. All right, last one. So my y squared is the one that is positive. So that tells me that we are going to have a vertical hyperbola again. Center is HK, so I will have 1, -1. So A is going to be the square root of 16, which is 4. B is the square root of 9, which is 3. And then if I add those, so 16 plus 9 is 25. And then the square root of 25 is 5. Okay. So for the vertices, since it's going to be vertical, that means, again, I'm adding and subtracting my a value to the y of my center. And then I will also have to add and subtract my c value to the y of my center to get the foci. So x will be the same. So -1 minus 4 is -5. And -1 plus 4 is 3. And then for the foci, -1 minus 5 is -6. And then -1 plus 5 is 4. And my asymptotes, I'm going to have y plus 1 equals plus and minus. And then I'm going up A when I graph and over B. So this will be 4 over 3. And then x minus 1. And then my domain is going to be negative infinity to positive infinity. And the range will be in parts. So negative infinity to negative 5 from the vertex, or 3 to infinity. And then for graphing, starting with my center, I'm going up and down my A. And then left and right the B. And then making my box. And also, just so you guys know, your A and B can be the same number. It doesn't happen too often, but it does happen. So don't think you're doing it wrong if your A and B are the same. Okay. And then going through the vertex and getting close to those asymptotes. Alright, so in the next set of videos, we'll do more practice, but when we are given the equations in general form.